If you are a pilot or an aircraft owner and you plan on flying into the year 2020, this short video could be the most important aviation video you've ever viewed. That's a fairly bold statement to make, but I feel that after you've watched this, you'll want to forward it to someone with the same aviation interest as yours. In the next 20 minutes, I'll explain three things. First, for aircraft owners, what the requirements will be and all the different ways to comply with this new mandatory upgrade for the year 2020. To the pilots, I'm going to explain how this will severely affect your flying. And third, and most importantly, something no one has yet to do, and that is to tell you the dirty little secrets that the FAA is keeping from the general aviation public. To date, very few people or general aviation support groups have yet to address or even acknowledge the draconian future of general aviation. But I will, and I promise it's going to be an awakening for the general aviation fraternity. The FAA calls it NextGen, for next generation of air traffic control. I call it disastrous for pilots and aircraft owners. The FAA simply says that after the year 2019, every aircraft that uses a Mode C transponder will have an additional or upgraded transponder installed in their aircraft. Current FAA statistics have revealed that it takes an average of 4 to 5 days to complete this transponder installation. If you take the number of aircraft that have not complied yet, and you divide that by the number of days remaining, it's calculated that if they did nothing but next-gen updates to general aviation aircraft, it would require more than 600 avionics shops to meet the deadline. I don't think there are that many facilities here in the U.S., so there's going to be a lot of aircraft stuck sitting on the ground for some time after this goes into effect. Be warned, there probably will be no extension. The FAA, backed by general aviation support groups, have all agreed that there's been more than 15 years to prepare for this. And to be truthful, I believe that the FAA sees this as an excellent revenue-generating program, violating owners with subsequent monetary fines for non-compliant aircraft. Let's talk about what quite probably is your current aircraft transponder. Pilots are familiar with the 4096 code transponder with altitude encoding Mode C. Every time your aircraft is struck by ground-based radar, it transmits back with a 4-digit code and a rough estimation of your altitude. It was a system devised in the 1940s that relied on timing how long it took a radio signal to reach your aircraft and bounce back. That was for aircraft distance. And then matching the direction on the radar display, it gave a general position of the aircraft to the radar operator. The displayed altitude information, created by a Mode C encoder, is also fairly inaccurate, as exhibited by how many times you hear air traffic controllers asking pilots to verify their displayed altitude with the radio request, "say altitude." These inaccuracies are all going to go away with the next-gen system. And claimed by the FAA, the new benefits will be very good for them. But at the same time, they won't tell you it'll be very, very bad for the pilots. The FAA touts the very good, but I'm going to explain the very bad. This new transponder is called ADSB. It stands for Automatic Dependent Surveillance Broadcast. Unlike conventional transponders that only broadcast when they're struck by a ground-based revolving radar, this new transponder transmits on its own. Dependent, a term I don't understand. It should be called independent because it's not dependent upon any other system. It independently just transmits on its own every single second. Surveillance, and yes, it is every bit that nasty word, because it watches over everything you do, knowing who you are, and where you're going. Broadcast, because it will be broadcasting all of this information out for the entire world to know. For pilots, from engine start to engine shutdown, who you are by N number, where you are with the accuracy of a few feet, including altitude, and where you're going will all be broadcast to the world every single second. There was a time when pilots were told, radar contact lost. This meant that controllers were no longer able to see your aircraft or anywhere you flew. Many a pilot has strayed into restricted airspace, but because there was little or no radar coverage in that area and nobody saw it, read that as air traffic control, then really, was there an enforceable foul? Now the FAA has installed about 1,500 passive antennas all over the country to just about guarantee radar surveillance across this entire nation. There will be no blind spots any longer. If you stray into airspace where you shouldn't be, this new unblinking eye of NextGen will know who you are and be able to track you to destination without interruption, where most certainly a violation will be waiting for you. That is just one of the nasty little secrets that's being withheld from you. Believe me, there's much more to come, so keep watching. To aircraft owners, let me explain all of the different ways you can comply with this requirement. Hopefully, with a brief education, you'll be able to make the right upgrade decision and hopefully an economical one. First, I recommend that you write down what type and model transponder you have now. Also write down the make and model of any panel-mounted GPS. I stress that this must be a panel-mounted GPS. Third, although not as important, the make and model of the Mode C altitude encoder. This might be a little harder to determine, and right now it's not as important. If perchance your aircraft is equipped with a Garmin G1000 EFIS, Electronic Flight Instrument System, or the Garmin GTN 750 or 650 touchscreen GPS, consider yourself an elitist, and you're in a category all by yourself. And for your solution, I'm just going to torture you and save your fancy panel equipment for last. For the rest of us, here is your first equipment consideration. If you have something like a Bendix King KT74 or a Garmin GTX 330, then you have a Mode S transponder. Remember that term, Mode S. Check it by turning it on. If it doesn't display ES or the term extended squitter, it might have to be updated. Make a note that for about $1,500, your current Mode S transponder can be updated. You must make a reservation for your transponder upgrade, though. I understand that there's typically a 6-month wait time, but when received by the factory, it takes about a 1-week turnaround. Check your panel-mounted GPS. Again, it must be panel-mounted. Is it a Bendix King or a Garmin GNS 400 or 500 series? Check to see if it has a suffix of W after the number. If it does not, it's not updated to Wide Area Augmentation System, known as WAAS. To update your GPS unit, it'll again have to be sent to the factory with costs of about $3,500. Your GPS antenna also has to be replaced. If you luckily have both a Mode S with ES and a WAAS GPS, then all you have to do is make sure, and they probably are, connected together with one wire, and you're in compliance. If you have to update both units, expect to pay about $5,000 to $6,000. Here's your second option. If you have something like a Narco AT150, Bendix King KT76, or a Garmin GTX 327, those are Mode C transponders. And if your GPS is not updated to WAAS, or you don't have a panel-mounted GPS, you have a number of paths to take. First, you can tear out your panel and install a new WAAS GPS and Mode S ES transponder. Expect to pay between $15,000 and $20,000. What do you get for this expense? Pretty much nothing. With nothing to benefit, what's the incentive for pilots to upgrade? Other than those steep fines for not complying, how does this directly benefit the pilot and make flying safer from our side of this? Here's a little secret for aircraft owners. If you promise not to fly out of the United States and not to fly above 18,000 feet, the FAA has a deal for you. It's called the UAT 978, or Universal Access Transceiver. This is the magic box solution. And thankfully, a couple of companies do make this everything-in-one-box solution. Just add this magic box to your aircraft. You don't have to tear out your communications and navigation radio panel. These compact boxes have a WAAS GPS and a compliant transponder built into one package. You can mount the box practically anywhere in your aircraft. Install its own GPS antenna and a small transponder antenna on the bottom and maybe the top of your aircraft. You do need to run 6 wires to your panel where a small compact display screen and power circuit breaker is installed. And now you comply. With this system, there are some direct benefits for the pilot. For 978 UAT systems only, there is an ADSB in option. First of all, if you have a display screen or even a computer pad or phone with Bluetooth, you can get real-time conflicting air traffic avoidance displays. You can also get real-time destination and en route weather information, all at no cost. This additional service is called ADSB In. These all-in-one magic boxes can be less than $4,000 in price, with installation being between $1,500 and $2,000 depending on aircraft. Because these units stand alone and are only an addition to your aircraft, you don't need an avionics shop to install them. This is where you do need to know the type of altitude encoder known as a Mode C encoder that you have. It probably is hidden somewhere near the back of your instrument panel of your aircraft. It's connected directly to your altimeter static hose, probably with a T-hose fitting. Check the encoder's model number. If it does not have a serial data output, you might have to replace it. Typical cost is about $200. If somewhere written on your actual altimeter there's the printing digitized altimeter, then that is your encoder, and you have to determine the type and serial number of your altimeter to see if it's compatible. A fourth direction to take is to remove your old transponder completely, enlarge your panel, and install a panel-mounted all-in-one replacement communications panel-mounted transponder 978 UAT. This still requires the installation of a GPS antenna and a reworking and rewiring of your navigation communication instrument panel. Because equipment is going to be removed, rewired, and reinstalled, this type of installation does require a communication installation facility. Okay, now for you Garmin G1000 instrument panel and Garmin GPS touchscreen people. Keeping you in the Garmin world, the Garmin people have the GDL88. It's their own proprietary UAT magic box. Somewhere in your aircraft is a box full of electronic componentry. Find that box and see if you have a GDL88 installed. If you don't, I might recommend you call or stop by an avionics service facility to completely evaluate your panel and system. Don't anybody click away from this video. I haven't told you the dirty little secrets of NextGen yet. That'll all come after this short equipment review. Other than Garmin EFIS or Touch GPS people, here again are those 4 paths to compliance if you're not currently ADSB equipped. 1. If you have a Mode S transponder and a standard GPS panel mount, upgrade either or both of those, hook them together, and you're in compliance. A solution that's fairly costly. 2. Purchase and install new Mode ES and WAS GPS in your panel. It's an expensive undertaking, and you're in compliance. Although this is extremely expensive, it's a great excuse to convince the spouse or other aircraft owners to finally tear out the entire communication stack and get that dream panel you've always wanted. 3, my favorite, is just to add the standalone magic box. Get both ADSB out and weather and traffic information in. It's the least expensive of the solutions and offers the most for the money. Finally, solution 4, replace your transponder with a panel-mounted UAT, which will require a comm shop for the installation. You've waited this long, so here are those dirty little secrets that, although have not ever been publicly disclosed, appear to have a strong possibility for enactment. Since the beginning of this century, the FAA has desperately attempted to instigate a pay-as-you-fly for general aviation. Not satisfied with the already high taxes on fuel, the FAA wants additional funds to be paid by general aviation users. This pay-by-flight has been abandoned only because it was determined that there was no easy way to track, prove, enforce, and collect these flight-by-mile taxes. They'll be labeled as user fees. Here's dirty little secret number 1. After all aircraft are brought into ADSB compliance, I believe that with a few lines of computer code typed in, it'll be quite easy to track every aircraft from engine startup to engine shutdown and send a bill for the miles flown to the aircraft owner. Some have speculated that a 100-mile round-robin flight could cost 50 cents to $1 per mile, resulting in maybe an additional $50 to $100 invoice sent to you from the FAA. Please, please, don't give me the pleasure of pointing to the date I posted this video and later saying, I told you so. Act now. Contact all general aviation support groups and demand that this will never be enacted. But good luck with that. Second secret, the FAA asked for a reduction in funding for ground-based radar facilities. because they claimed that they were going to redirect the funding for the installation of 1,500 passive ADF antennas. They said that they would no longer be a need for mechanical rotating antenna arrays. They're all liars. Secretly, the FAA has had to keep all of the ground radar funding intact. The reasoning is, of course, that without it, there will be no way to determine who turns their ADSB off and then flies undetected. So, expect heavy fines for aircraft not equipped with ADSB. Expect fines for pilots violating airspace that has previously gone undetected. Expect fines for pilots who turn their ADSB off. Expect user fees in the future based on the information broadcast out on your ADSB unit from engine startup to engine shutdown. If you have any equipment questions, I would love to talk with you about your ADSB requirements and possibly help resolve them and send you the right direction. Also, don't leave comments below. It's much easier to send me an email at adsbnow@gmail.com. I am both a certified flight instructor with thousands of hours of flight time and a Federal Communications Commission, FCC, commercial first-class licensed radio technician. Talking and texting is free. Don't procrastinate. Trust me. Protect yourself. Act now. Forward this video to all of your friends who are pilots and aircraft owners. Help place permanent restraints on the prosecutorial uses of ADSB. Also, become aircraft compliant now. You will be overwhelmed by the crowds if you wait to the very last moment. There's your future. Become compliant now and know and understand how this is going to affect your future flying.